The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
After nearly a year of negotiating and lots of posturing and pressure from various community groups calling for significant reform, the Cincinnati Board of Education and the members of the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers approved a new contract last week. The contract will be implemented January 1st and remains in effect through December the 31st, 2013. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. A great deal rides on every teacher contract in every district in the region. But the negotiations around the contract for the teachers in the Cincinnati public schools, which stretched out over all of 2010, took on special significance. Against the backdrop of the federal government's race to the top, a great deal of national research and popular opinion shaped by films like Waiting for Superman, a view has developed that the key to student success, no matter what their socioeconomic background or challenges, is a good teacher. That led to pressure here in Cincinnati, led by Stand Up for Kids and other groups, that the new contract should not just be about salaries and benefits, but about changing the way teachers are evaluated and compensated as a tool to improve the quality of education. To discuss the new contract, I am joined this morning by Julie Sellers, President of the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers, Mary Ronan, the Superintendent of the Cincinnati Public Schools, and Eve Bolton, a member of the Cincinnati Board of Education. All of you, welcome back to Newsmakers, and thank you for being here this morning. Julie, you saw the focus that I had on this question of teacher evaluation, compensation, quality, et cetera, et cetera. Not to prejudice with that, though, but in your mind as the president of the union, what do you think are the one or two really important things about this new contract?
Well, I think one of the great strengths of the contract is how we built in many new collaborative structures. We know that we have to be on the forefront for education for students. In order for that to happen through any of the reform that takes place, teachers need to be at the table along with administration to make sure that it's implemented in a way that is going to work in the classroom. So that is one of the things that we really worked on strengthening.
Give me a concrete instance of where this collaboration will play itself out that you think is really important.
Well, we have the Educational Initiatives panel, and with that panel we will be overseeing and implementing everything concerning all of the assurances of Race to the Top. We will make sure that there are teachers at the table, that what is happening in the classroom with Race to the Top is going to be implemented in a way that's the most effective for teachers and students.
Mary, from your perspective, long time with the district, now superintendent, what do you think are the key things that you would point to in this contract that are important to you?
What I see is really important is we now have one of the most progressive teacher contracts in the country. It needed to be updated. You know, our current contract...
Are you saying you were starting with one of the most progressive?
No, we now have one.
You now have one.
Because,
okay.
You know, the old contract was certainly it fit the times, but it's been 25 years. The old collective bargaining agreement predated No Child Left Behind and all the educational reforms that are out there. So this contract took into consideration what's out on the national front, and now I believe we have a very, very progressive contract.
Can you point out to us something that illustrates how this has changed from the old contract?
Definitely. We have lots of flexibility at the school site for teachers to change their schedule, the school day, to make it better for the children. Before, everything was much more lockstep. Now we've given our schools, and various, depending on what tier you are in, you get different levels of flexibility. I think that's really important because a one-size-fits-all does not work when you've got 58 school buildings at varying levels.
When you're saying tiers, you mean high school, junior high, elementary?
No, how you rank in terms of your scores, in terms of, yes.
So this is driven by scores?
Yes.
Higher scores, the more local control?
Well, no, actually we're trying, it used to be like that. We are trying to give more flexibility at all levels, but we tend to be a bit more prescriptive at the struggling school.
Okay.
Yes. Plus it takes in the fact that we have to redesign and transform our schools, which we do because we're required by federal law to transform a failing school. We just can't let the status quo stay. So now we work with the union, the board, the administration, CFT, and our teachers work together to redesign or transform that school, because that's what you need for student success.
Eve, you've been on both sides of this equation. You were a teacher throughout your career, not in Cincinnati Public, but in Wyoming, but now you're a board member at Cincinnati Public. What do you see as important about this? What would you point to?
There are so many things, but I think, first of all, it's a comprehensive reform, both an operational reform in Cincinnati, as Mary and Julie are suggesting, more site-based decision-making and what have you. I think the biggest thing, besides the student achievement piece being part of all three of our evaluation tools, I think the biggest thing, frankly, is the community engagement that has now occurred as a result of all of this. And we have found ways to make sure that our parents and our citizens, because the vast majority of people that vote regarding tax levies are not parents of our own children. We've involved the full community in the united front and interest in the efforts by the business district folks and by the, if you will, the people committed to education, our parents for public schools. All of those folks are engaged with not only forcing us to do the right thing nationally, but also with the implementation to make sure that this is a student-first kind of contract, and I think that's great.
On this point that you just referenced and I referenced in the opening, and that is the process of teacher evaluation and the way it's linked to student progress, value added. How does this contract change what traditionally existed? Whoever wants to jump in on that one.
Well, part of the teacher evaluation system and how we're going to use the multiple measures of student achievement, that's all going to be in the planning stages. So beginning the first week of January, we are going to have a committee who will work on developing that. That was all just done through an MOU. And part of that was
memorandum of
understanding. And part of that is because we have to make sure that we have all the requirements of Race to the Top embedded within our teacher evaluation system.
So are you saying that Race to the Top did drive some aspects of the negotiation here?
Yes, absolutely.
So even though there's not huge dollars there, but the need was still to step up to that.
I think as both, all of us have talked about, what was happening nationally and what was happening locally did drive these negotiations, so that it wasn't just an internal kind of thing. And the federal dollars, the state dollars, actually served, very frankly, to inspire us, and we can use those to leverage to figure out what works and what doesn't work in the name of reform, and then figure out, after those dollars dry up, how can we or what should we sustain from those dollars in our own general fund. So it had exactly the impact I think the leaders around the country wanted it to have, at least here in Cincinnati.
Mary, how will an individual teacher out there, let's not in a school that's failing, not in a school that is at the top, but one of the schools that is working hard, doing what they're doing, how will that individual teacher experience the change here? How does it get down to that level?
On a daily basis, that teacher will meet with a team of teachers, determine their schedule, the youngster's schedule. That's the first thing. They also can make decisions where they couldn't make before, in terms of, this was the length of the school day, you weren't allowed to change anything. They can bring their ideas to the instructional leadership team at the building level and say, oh, we'd like to experiment with this, we would like to try that, and they would be allowed to do it. And I think that is certainly appropriate. And then when the teacher gets their evaluation, before you pretended test scores didn't exist. And now there'll be multiple measures. Did you meet your target? And those targets are jointly developed by the principal and the teacher. And if you're at a grade level that's being tested, there will be the test score component to see if you really, did you add a year's worth of growth to the child, or did you add more or less than a year's worth of growth?
And that's the value added concept.
That's the value added concept, yes.
So it's not just the raw score, it's did you move people forward?
Yes, it wouldn't be fair it was just the raw score, and if it were just 1 year. But value added looks at, are you moving a child forward over time?
How do the teachers look at that change? How do you think the rank and file looks at that?
I think that there are some teachers who will have some concerns about it, but the way we did it in a way that is going to be fair for every teacher. We will be looking at the types of students they have. We will look at what is the component in the makeup of their classroom. So it won't be something that will be a gotcha system. We will make sure that it's fair for all teachers.
Let me ask just, that basic question when we think about negotiating any contract. What about basic pay, salaries, and benefits? And I take it there was some real give and take here. What did the teachers offer? What did they end up with?
Everyone in the district will be having higher health care costs. Are the teachers happy about that? No. But when you saw the final vote, 2/3 of the district voted to accept this. They understand that we're in the economic times that we're in, and that health care was not going to be something to hold up the progress made by the district.
And was health care a real sticking point for the rank and file?
Health care was a huge sticking point for everyone, because we did not have across-the-board raises, but yet healthcare costs were doubling. So they will be paying 20% of what the premium rate is, or the COBRA rate.
Okay, so what might that be? I mean, there's the 20%, there's doubling, all of those words, but out of pocket, what are people going to pay now compared to what they were paying?
It depends on what their salary is.
Okay.
So we wanted to make sure, we have always done ours as a percentage of what a teacher's salary is. So we converted those COBRA rates back to the percentage of salary. So a teacher who is a younger teacher in the system and they don't make as much, then they don't pay as high as what a veteran teacher would pay.
For those of us who are outside the system, can anybody give me a number for somebody making $36,000, somebody who's making $50,000? Can somebody give me any number for what somebody might be paying for health care?
Per year? Or
month,
monthly?
or how, whatever.
I know that
multiply.
a new teacher who is making $32,000,
okay,
they will be going to pay about $50 a paycheck.
$50 is the total.
Right.
Whereas they would have been paying about $25?
Yes.
Okay.
Per check.
Okay.
Now it will go up to a veteran teacher who is their master's plus 30, where they'll be paying several $100s a month.
Okay.
And that depends, that's the lowest is for a single plan, up to a veteran teacher with a family plan.
All of that sort of.
And then we also had a change of design of the plan also.
Yeah, that happens every year in every workplace.
Indeed it does.
How do you feel as both board and administration about what the teachers were willing to do on these sort of nitty-gritty issues?
I think it speaks volumes about the professionalism of our teaching staff. If you look at what happened in DC, they got a great contract, but it took $60 million of additional funds. We got reforms here. At the same time, we had no across-the-board raises. We had to ask teachers for health care concessions. So it's amazing what we did here in Cincinnati. We're fiscally conservative, and I think that played out in this contract. And it speaks volumes about our teaching staff, who realizes that, and actually we were smart too. We leveraged our federal dollars to give teachers incentives, but we couldn't do it out of general fund dollars. So it's pretty amazing we got to where we did.
It's really interesting. I'm unfortunately out of time. It's really interesting to hear the dynamic about the federal dollars, about the negotiations. This has been very enlightening for me, and thank you very much. And you know you'll all be back, because education is basic to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay tuned after the break. The Christmas story of Bernard Pasteur, an American dreamer. Bernard Pasteur is a young man from Reading, Ohio, who understands his life through the lens of scriptures.
God has the purpose for everything, and I never doubted that. I held true to my faith, to the fact where it says in the Bible that we must have faith like a mustard seed. But it doesn't speak of the size, but it speaks of the hope that the mustard seed has to grow. That's what I held on to. When one community decides to change, the city decides to change. When the city decides to change, the state decides to change. And when the state changes, the nation will change.
Welcome back. On November 17th, the Springdale police stopped an 18-year-old Bernard Pastor for a minor traffic violation because the Reading High School graduate was brought to the United States from Guatemala as a young child. He was undocumented and does not have a driver's license. The police turned him over to the Butler County Sheriff, who turned him over to the United States Immigration and Customs Service, ICE. After a month of pressure and legal maneuvering, Bernard was granted a year's delay and release from detention. He was whisked to Washington to help lobby the Senate to pass the American Dream Act. That failed, but Bernard returned home to Cincinnati and is with us this morning. He is joined by Leo Pierson, the Ohio Director of Civil Rights for the League of United Latin American Citizens, or LULAC. Welcome to Newsmakers. Leo, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Thank you, Dan.
Bernard, this has been a whirlwind. Where are you emotionally at this moment? How do you feel?
I'm very excited to be here, first of all. It's certainly been a long journey, and I think now it's just a matter of, I feel relieved and very happy to be back home.
How do you think your parents have held up, and your family, your immediate family, how have they held up through all of this?
I know it was difficult because it was difficult for me. It certainly would be difficult for anyone, I think, but we've held on and we've learned the bond that is between us is very strong, I think, and that has helped us throughout this whole situation.
Your parents are Guatemalan. You were born in Guatemala. You have lived here a long time. You graduated. What age were you when you came?
3 years old.
3 years old. You graduated from Reading High School last year. How do you think of yourself?
I am an American. I feel that is true. I guess the legal term as of now would be an undocumented American. Mm-hmm. And I think that I know who I am, and I repeated it several times, that just because I was born somewhere else, that doesn't define me. I think that where I've grown and what I know is what defines me.
Leo, Bernard is one person who happens to be from our community and
Sure.
Has drawn a lot of attention because of his situation here.
Yes.
And you were in Washington last week for the debate about the DREAM Act. Lots of people were there, like
Mm-hmm.
Bernard, right?
Yes.
He's not unique, right?
Right. I mean, I think that's one of the most important things here, and I think this is, Bernard's the first to say this. There are, at this point, DREAM would have immediately impacted the lives of 800,000 people.
800,000.
800,000 people, and because you have to graduate from high school or get a GED to be eligible for the DREAM Act. So that 800,000 doesn't include nearly another 1 million people that haven't yet graduated from high school. So there are 70,000 people graduating from high schools around the country every single year that are in the same exact situation that Bernard finds himself in. So, this is a concern for all of us around the country.
You met with Senator Voinovich, who ended up not voting for it. Now, his argument was, at least in the paper, what I was able to read, was that he did not vote for this because he said this was the easy thing to do, because he believes this should have been done, that should happen. But if we pass this, the Senate won't get around to doing comprehensive immigration reform, not only to impact you, but to impact your parents, to impact the larger community, not just young people. How do you feel about Senator Voinovich's decision?
I told him I'm a very honest person, and I'm not a politician, so I respect his judgment. Certainly the fact that he voted no was disappointing, but I think that his argument of the fact that the Senate won't address it because of the passage of the DREAM Act was a little weak, because I know that the people are more susceptible to making the next step once the first one is made already versus falling back down. So I think that would have impacted greatly in terms of the future years to come.
How much time did you have with the senator?
Collectively, I think we all had like 10 minutes, okay. Around 10 minutes.
How many were in the group?
I don't
I
think there were 5 of us.
Okay, so fairly small.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In a sense that you could interact with him.
Yeah, it was right outside of his office, and there was nobody else around except us, and he just happened to walk around the corner on his own. So,
Getting away from policy, I want to run a clip from your press conference earlier this week, and let's just take a look at it, and then I'll say something about it.
My friends, I am forever in debt to them. When I first heard about the news, that all that they were doing,
A week ago,
it shocked me.
served as a youth
It left me
minister
speechless.
and a worship leader going to a
To know that I wasn't
nearby
forgotten,
church called St. Julie's, where
and
he
to know that I did make an impact on their lives. And I certainly can say to them that they've made a huge impact on my life.
Chapter 29, verse 11.
I do not know how I will be able to repay them. But I think them seeing me now is enough for them. Them being able to hug me is enough. Them being able to see that smile that they, for some reason, say is a great smile. It's a great reward for them, and I know that. And they are the ones that brought this result, along with the people who...
When I saw that clip, I wasn't just focused on you. I was focused on your friends behind you and how they reacted. I mean, what a classic. I taught high school for 6 years. I mean, it's hard. We can't forget that with you and with other people, we're talking about young people who are just trying to figure things out. And those friends were amazing.
They certainly were.
Yeah. And these are, you know, just from all those, the 3 young women that we saw standing behind her, were they in your graduating class at Reading High School?
2 of them were in my graduating class. One of them is a senior currently.
Senior currently.
Yes.
What do you hope for yourself at this point? As I understand it, there's a year now of that this case won't come back up. What do you hope will happen?
I'm certainly one of the things that the Dreamers told me is I can't get away from them now. So it's something that of course I want to be a part of and be an advocate here in Cincinnati. And I think that that's going to be a major part of me in the future months to come. And you know, continue the fight because it's not over. It's far from over.
I love that image, the Dreamers, and that's how people talk about themselves.
Yes. Well, I think it's a good way to address it because I don't know who said it, but I once heard someone say that the moment we stop dreaming is the moment we stop living. So I think it's a good way to put it in terms of who we are.
Leo, from a larger perspective, what has to happen now from your perspective, LULAC, other organizations that believe this sort of systematic transformation legislation needs to happen? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think that what myself and what my colleagues saw this past Saturday is that you know, when the Republicans voted this down, most of the Republicans, 5 Dems, 6, but is that they galvanized the Dreamers, and the Dreamers, you know, 5 years ago were still very young. They're not young anymore, and they have no capacity to see themselves as anything but culturally Americans. They can't see themselves as anything but belonging here. And now they're adults, and now they're galvanized, and they are going to, I think, be the leadership of the immigration movement, which we see as a civil rights movement here in the United States. If this stuff is going to pass, it's going to be because of people like Bernard.
And so, practically speaking, is there an organization out there that you can hook onto? Is there something that you just have to work on your own here? What's your understanding of what you can do?
Certainly I'm going to try to do things on my own, but a lot of connections have been made, certainly, and I think that that's going to benefit me as well. And it's a matter of time, and I'm sure the city of Cincinnati will see.
We're going to hear and see you again?
Yes.
Well, when that happens, I want you to come back here. So, because this is very important, what you were doing. You know, and we only have about a minute left, but very quickly.
Yeah.
It's not, one of the key things to me is about the Dreamers, the young people, but the other thing is we just have to have a guest worker policy that makes something rational so that people can move back and forth.
Right.
And people who don't want to come here and then get trapped here.
Right.
Or, you know, it just seems to me that's key to everything.
No, I think that's a reasonable policy position to take. For the last 100 years, we've had a circular migration system, and that has broken down at this point because of exactly what you said.
Bernard, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Good luck. Leo, thank you.
Absolutely, always a pleasure.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to begin 2011 with a new tool that allows us to measure how we are doing against regions competing with us for talent, venture capital, and jobs. Have a good week. Very good.